the Teach Pitch podcast. We are very excited to be launching a series of interviews for Teach Pitch, a global community of tens of thousands of subscribers from over 205 countries who all have a desire to improve the state of education in this world. And for these interviews, we have selected a number of our subscribers who have achieved great things. And by great, I mean amazing. Think of former presidents, entrepreneurs, fashion designers, hospital builders, non-profit founders, authors, journalists, doctors, etc. And what all our guests have in common is that despite their great success, they've encountered many enormous challenges. So what were these challenges and how did they overcome them? That is what we are going to be talking about here. My name is Aldo de Pap and I'm massively looking forward and very grateful you can join us in this journey. So sit back, relax and download the podcast here.
But she also clearly is attracting these people. I mean, like there's hundreds of thousands of different people out there. And for some reason, she has such a boss, such a boyfriend. She knows this kind of relationship where she is the shadow or she's the one who's taking the blame or it's familiar to her.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have this. I think it's very good if you're raised in a functional family and if you're not taught to be in a healthy relationship with any kind of relationship, I mean, in professionally or personally, like how do you do this?
A very warm welcome. Thank you so much again for listening to the Teach Pitch podcast. This one is a very special episode because it is an interview with the Dutch-Belgian film director Sabine Lubbe. She's made quite a few documentaries, series, as well as movies. The most notable being Ne me quitte pas in 2013 and Becoming Mona, a film that came out in 2020. Now, for both of these, she and her partner Niels van Coevoorden won quite a few prizes, awards, and accolades all over the world. Now, there are many prizes, but I think the one very much worthy of mentioning is the Golden Calf that she won in 2014 for Ne me quitte pas as the best long documentary. And for Becoming Mona, she was awarded Best Director in 2021. And the Golden Calf, if you haven't heard of it, is the most renowned film prize in the Dutch-speaking market. This is just one among many, as I said before. You should definitely Google Sabine Lubbe as well as Ne me quitte pas and Becoming Mona when you got the chance, because I'm sure there's a lot more to what I am telling you here. But Sabine has a knack for telling stories, and I can highly recommend Becoming Mona, which is now available to purchase and download on Apple TV. Now, there's a little caveat here, because other than the fact that Sabine is an amazing director, she is also my cousin, my first cousin. So it is safe to say that there is definitely some family pride going on here. I'm not going to hide that. However, I assure you that after listening to this interview, or even if you get the chance to watch one of her movies, you will love Sabine by any standard or measure. So please enjoy episode 45, Sabine Lubbe, the filmmaker.
This podcast is brought to you by Smartest, an app that uses artificial intelligence to let you create interactive quizzes for your class in a few seconds. Get started for free on app.smartest.io. We're so happy to be partnering with Hee Ha Ho, an interactive video platform that enables teachers and students to easily create amazing clickable videos for learning. Check out heehaho.com for more information and your free starter account. A big thank you to our friends at Zeus Maths Challenger, the only puzzle that effectively boosts your numeracy, critical thinking, and brain power. Go to czeusspuzzles.com to get your brain buzzing. We are so excited to be working with the team at Learning Ladders, the only platform that provides assessment that goes way beyond tracking to effectively support teaching and learning for EYFS primary and secondary settings. Go to learningladders.info to find out more.
Yes, a very warm welcome to yet another episode of the Teach Pitch podcast. And this one is I think, very peculiar and special one, because when I started this podcast program, I was trying to reach out as far and wide as I could to talk to people very, very, very far away from me in Ecuador or in Cameroon or in Qatar. And for this interview, I have actually have invited someone very close to me, kind of the inner circle, and who I've invited to come and speak to me today is my very dear cousin, Sabine Lubbe Bakker. And I'm very happy she's here. And Sabine is not only my cousin, but she is also a very successful film and documentary maker in the Netherlands. And Sabine, I'm so happy you could make some time available to talk to me. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I was very honored to be asked. Yes. Yeah. And it's a very funny way to talk to you again also.
It is. So I was ecstatic that you said yes. You said yes immediately. It's really great to have you here. It's funny that we need to speak to each other in English as well. Let's talk about your journey, Sabine. I think you're already 10 plus years in the filmmaking business.
Yes.
You know, we've grown up together. We're about the same age. I know that as a student, you always had a very wide interest in the world.
True. Yeah.
You like to study people. Remind me again, you studied politics?
Yes, I studied many things.
Okay.
But maybe I'm 43 now, and I think I searched for a purpose in life, or I always thought like there is something that I really want to do, but I don't know what it is. And I think I found it when I was 27, so it's quite late, I think, if you look at people now looking for what they want in their life. And I was lucky enough that I was able to search. When I was 17, I thought I would change the world and invent the economic model, how there would be like the solution for third world countries. Also, I think I like stories a lot. I think I found out along the way, I think we didn't grow up, I think, with a lot of examples of creative professions. So it was not really an option for me. I mean, I never grew up with the idea like, oh, you can be a filmmaker or you can be an artist or make anything. I mean, it was much more an entrepreneurial way of life that I was taught by my parents and relatives all around. And I always thought that I would be very good at it, but it turns out I'm very bad at that. And the older I get, I realize I have to stay away from all this entrepreneurial stuff. But I love making films. I was studying political science at the university in Amsterdam, and I did this. It was just a simple course. It was making political documentaries, and it was, for me, it was like everything I always wanted to do came together. It was research. It was creating things. It was working with people. It was being very interested in people, or it was just, and then you have the editing, and it was, you can start all over again and create your story. It is very much about like what you think about a certain subject. How do you talk about this subject? So for me, it was, when I did this course, it was really like, it opened my eyes, and I just said like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life and nothing else. And with everything else I did before, it was just like, yeah, I like to write, I like to do this, I like to research, I like to travel, I like to meet people. I simply didn't know what to do. I mean, I was at a certain point in my life. I was living in Brazil because I did an exchange program. I said like, I really don't know what direction I have to take. So then I just started to make a list with all the things I don't want to do in my life, or I didn't want to do in my life. And I think the first thing I wrote was, I don't want to get up early in the morning every day. I mean, it was really that basic. It was that basic, but it's still, I mean, for me, my quality of life is very important. And I think also for what I do, it's very important to be inspired, not to get burned out, like to feel appreciated, to feel free to move around me with people in my mind, in my heart. I need a certain freedom, and I need a certain context to feel free, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I didn't study film. I just started doing it. No. Then I bluffed myself into
it. I'm trying to connect the dots. So you say political science, that was everything you were looking for. You like to do the research, as you said yourself. And then I think what you but this is just a suggestion, but you also like the story behind it, I guess. So you kind of wanted to find the people who were affected by, potentially any conflicts or anything ongoing in this world. Like, what's their story?
Yeah, I was doing political sciences, and I was living in Syria at the time, and I had to write my thesis. And for me, I thought it was really interesting that these people had blue eyes and red hair, for instance. And I wrote all these things down. And I think my mentor, they said, like, it's not really academical. It's much more, it's a story. And I realized I like this. I think a small story talks about the big story. I like the big story. I'm very interested in the world. I'm very interested in people. But I realized, like, for me, the way how I process it, it's through little stories, through personal contact. So I realized, I think I only realize it now. I think in meeting people, as things start to move, I remember when I was living in Syria, it was also like I realized how my own framework of thinking works. I realized how extremely European centered I am. Then I was talking to these guys my age or younger or older, and they were Syrian guys or Lebanese guys or whatever, and we were talking and we got into these fights, and I realized it's just like I'm just thinking from my perspective. I'm just debating or discussing. Everything is from my perspective, and they are doing exactly the same thing, and it's exactly this what is so difficult, how to reach to people. But if you realize this, then I cannot pretend I'm not European. I cannot pretend not to be raised in a country where I feel safe, for instance, or where I have a lot of opportunities. But from the moment I am aware of this, and the other person is as well, you get into really beautiful conversations. And I think it makes life worthwhile.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. But is it correct that film basically takes away those barriers? That film basically takes away the fact that you're in a lane. You say you perceive a situation from your European lane, your Western European lane, and that prevents you from having a proper conversation with someone in Syria or in Lebanon because they think from their lane. Is the medium of film, is that equipped basically to take away those barriers? Or would you say there's always going to be a barrier?
Like with my last film, I was very interested in family relationships and how people relate towards each other. And I think this is extremely universal.
Yeah.
Of course, there are cultural differences, but I think the way we relate to our mother or father or siblings, it's very universal and recognizable. And I think the more specific you get into it, the more people would feel related to the subject, I think.
Yeah. So we all have our specific lane and our specific glasses on, which is conditioned by where we are from. Yeah. But there are also universal values, around, as you say, the feeling of family. That's everywhere, right? Everyone.
But the fact that we're in a lane, the fact that we're all coming from somewhere and that we take this with us, this is also universal. It doesn't maybe matter what we take with us, but the fact that we are coming from somewhere and that we are never objectively launched into the world, I guess.
Yeah. And, that's also an awareness. Yeah, that's very good. You've jumped because you said, like, I was in Brazil, I was in Syria. Just for the listeners, what got you into those countries? So one in Brazil was an exchange program.
Yeah, I studied there.
What got you?
I think now I'm at a point in my life. At that time, I traveled a lot. I love to travel. And I think I always wanted to go to many places. And I know, actually, I didn't like traveling so much. I loved living in another country a lot. I loved learning other languages, meeting different people. I think I loved that a lot. But maybe now I realize I was much more fleeing away from something than going towards another thing. Now I'm very keen and very happy. And now I live in Amsterdam, which is like 2 hours away from where I'm from in Antwerp in Belgium. But I really like where I am now. I'm much more it's very hard to get me out of this place. Now at this point in my life, maybe it'll change again. I think it was easier to understand something that was not mine. It was easier to look at something and analyze things that were not my problems. And I think now I'm much more able and ready to face my own problems and my own issues. My first film was also in Syria and Israel. It was much easier to look at these people and have a story about them. And now I think it's much easier to have stories. I mean, like I'm not really interested for me personally to make something about myself, but I mean to make stories that are much more closer to me.
So take me back to Syria, because while you were there in Syria, still graduating, is that when you also made your first film, or did you come back to make the film?
No, I lived there for a while, then I came back, then I made a film. I think then it started to shift. I felt like if I want to be good at this filmmaking thing, I have to choose, I have to choose a base, because I need a network, because I didn't study film and a lot of people around me do. And I realized, they all have networks when they graduate studying film. So I don't. So I have to, if I move around all the time, how will I build something? How will
you do it?
How will people know who I am, or how do I know how to finance a film? Where do I get a producer? Where do I get camera people, sound people? Where do I edit? Like I realized I needed a base. I thought like I'm not going to do this alone, and I think this was for me a very important thing, because I was so used to doing everything by myself. I always felt very strong because I don't need anybody. But if you make a film, you need so many people. It's a very hardcore lesson, I think, in that you have to open up to other people, and that you but it's also a nice thing. But I thought it was particularly difficult also, because it's not easy to acknowledge that you're not good in certain things, or that you don't know stuff. It's like you have to be open to it and ask. I think that's the most important thing, like where you start off becoming a professional, is that you are honest about things you don't know.
You need to have the wisdom to basically see, well, the only way for me to get to where I want is also to collaborate and to share your vision with others, right? That's the process. And actually, that's also what you define as your first challenge. You basically say, leave your ego at the door. It's not about your ego. It's about the film. So you need to collaborate with so many people. How hard was that for you?
Well, I can tell you, like the first film, I work very often now with my partner, with Niels van Koevoorde. And we share a boat, we share children, we share loads of things together. But we also share making films together, and we co-direct often. He's camera and I direct actually only, and I write more. The first film we made was a documentary, and nobody cared about this film, or we got a little bit of money, but we did other stuff to finance it, and we did everything ourselves. So I did the sound, he did the camera, and we were making this film. It's about two guys in the south of Belgium, in Wallonia. I still miss making that film, but it was very hardcore because we're both directors. So basically it was this. So we started shooting a scene. It was like two guys, they were drinking a lot all the time and in a forest, whatever. And when we're filming them, I'm holding the microphone, he's holding the camera. And it was like, if I had an idea for a scene, he would film it in a way that we could never use it. And then if he had an idea, I would put the microphone in the image, like, see, we were totally sabotaging each other, like totally, because we were all thinking like, my idea is better than your idea, and I'm not going to make your idea be any better, like, you see my idea.
Yeah.
So I'm
very productive.
It was a bit childish, maybe.
Yeah.
So, but then it was very funny. We both, at the same day, we started shooting, and we both had this idea separately from each other. Like, now it's time to leave the ego, because this film we made, I think it's really a very good film. Personally, I made it, but I still am very proud of this film. But also because, well, that gets me to another point. But we really made it with the two of them, and you have different phases in making this film. And it was when we were editing, it was exactly the same. We were trying to sabotage each other. I wish there was a better word for it, or a more nicer term to call it. And it was really ego. It was nothing else, and I think after this, we think like, now we know, now we're not going to let our egos get in the way. But of course it happens. It still happens.
Yeah. It happens in different ways, most probably. But I think you raise a very interesting point. And first of all, let me say that this film that you refer to, it was, I think, even globally acknowledged as a huge success, right? The documentary is called Ne me quitte pas. I just want to prevent, Sabine, for you being too modest here, because let me brag on your behalf.
Thank you.
It won loads of prizes. I think, the most renowned prize you could win in the Netherlands, I think the BAFTA or the César from the Dutch market is
the golden cow. The golden calf.
No, but all jokes aside, that's an enormous recognition. And, for a documentary that you just highlighted some childish scenarios, but it came out beautifully. And I was just before our interview reading reviews from the New York Times, Hollywood Reporter, and then big actors that looked at it, and people engaged with it, right? It was really kind of a huge success, specifically for two people who were practically new to the business or almost new to the business.
Yeah.
So that must have been a wake-up call for you when it was out there, or wasn't it?
Well, it is a bit daunting, I think, when you get all this attention. I mean, like, I always thought, because I do have an ego, I mean, like, I always thought it would be really nice that everybody compliments you on a film. But I mean, at the end, I always work very long on a film. I mean, I work on it for at least 5 years, and then it gets out, and then I want it to be a success. But at the same time, it's very scared, because if I'm dependent on what other people think, it's like this film very much. I mean, they said like two guys drinking too much in the south of Belgium. Who cares, like, so we had a little money, but not enough. Nobody really cared. But this was our chance, I think, because nobody was telling us what to do. And we were also not caring about what other people would think. Like, if you make a film, it's very difficult, because when you're filming, it's one thing. But when you're in the edit room, it's like there's a lot of people who can come by and they say like, oh, but you should do this, or you should do that, or this is how, And I like very much films where there's authorship in it, when it's very made by a specific person. And we also thought we were editing it ourselves, and we thought like, but then we will find money in 6 months, and then the real editor will come and they will make a real movie out of it. But because of this, we were so free in making this film. We just thought like, oh yeah, we'll just leave it a bit longer. Oh, this is so funny, like little jokes that we thought were really funny, but we would really thought like they would be cut out immediately. But we let them in, and it worked, because the whole thing became ours. And the two men who the film is about, they were very open. They also thought like, what are these guys doing here for 2 years? They're here every month for a week. Are they really going to make a film? We don't know, But this freedom, like, to discover what your own gut feeling is, like what you think is beautiful. It's very hard. I mean, especially in a world where there's so many people who have an opinion about stuff, like, what do you think is beautiful? What makes you tick? What makes you laugh? What makes you cry? I mean, it's very personal, and it's exactly this what you have to be open about. But I think people say it a lot, but it's difficult to find this, to find it and to stay true to this.
And let alone then also trying to convey it, because once you know yourself, you don't know whether other people are going to see that, right? I think with the medium of film, you're trying to show something to someone, but I think in your case, with Ne me quitte pas, which is the name of this documentary that came out of it, but also with your other film, Becoming Mona, it couldn't get more personal. These are very personal stories, right? Yep. These are very, very close to our psyche, or to who you are. It's very intimate. That's the word. It's a very intimate image you're trying to reflect. And because it's so intimate, you're going to get a variety of reactions. You've done that beautifully. You've done that beautifully twice, with Ne me quitte pas, and then with Becoming Mona, that we will discuss in just a second. But it's almost provocative, right? It's kind of like you feel like, oh my God, I don't want to see this. It's like, but I do. You do or you don't, right? It's kind of, I think as a spectator, you're like,
I like things that are hard or difficult. I mean, I find comfort in this when I watch such a thing. I like it.
And what about your partner? So where I think you sound very similar on many levels in filmmaking. Yeah. Are you also different on certain levels? Of in
Yeah, and I think the longer we work together, you could say like I'm more the thinker and he's more the doer. He loves all the technical stuff. I think this is also, in the beginning, we both wanted to do everything. I mean, like he's also a director and we are actually having this conversation sometimes now, because for me, I made a choice. I like very long, difficult projects for many years and only one. I don't like to work too hard. I mean, like I like to work hard, but I mean, like I don't like to do 3 projects at the same time. I'm very, very single focused. For me, it really works. I like to get really deep into a subject. And he can do more things at the same time, but then it's also the connection is different, I think, because he likes when you're only doing the camera, you can do more projects because it's, you only get in when it's started already, and then you get out before it's ended. For me, it's always from the beginning till the end. So I think the older we get, the more we accept the fact that we're different, and the more we divide stuff. I think like in the beginning we were much more doing everything together. I think now it's much more like, oh, you're good at this. I mean, like, he's my agent now sometimes, which is also very nice.
So before we get into your second challenge, you said something earlier on when you were making that documentary about financing, because I think that's a big question. I think for a lot of people, it's like, well, a lot of people like to make a film, or but it's very hard to get the funding for it. And am I correct to assume that for your first documentary, you just had a little bit of money, and then you're midway in the adventure, and then you need to raise funds again and to kind of see where you're not sure when you start the journey whether you're going to get more money?
It's difficult because it's in every country, it's different. And I think in Europe, it's always been that it's subsidized for a long. A big part is, or everything is subsidized, but it's changing a lot. So I think my first film, which is called Shout in the Middle East, I think this was much more made in a more normal way. There were subsidies, and we went there. After I wrote a plan, we got money, then we started filming, and all the money was there already. But it was also more difficult because I was in a system, But then much more. I think it's better. I really think it's better. I think it's because there's less people telling you what to do. Making a film it's not that hard. It's just like you really need to want to make this film. I mean, like because there will always be obstacles to make it. So it's more like, how badly do you want to make this? And it can take a long time. But I think like now you can make a film with your phone. It's not about the technical stuff anymore. It's much more like, do you have an idea about what you're gonna make and how much time do you want to put into it? Are you able to find people around you who can help you that are better at things than you are? And I think with this second film, Ne me quitte pas, I think we started doing crowdfunding, which was horrible, really absolutely horrible to do. But it gave us 10,000 euros, which was also not so much. But it was fine for me at that time, like I could invest. I was also working for a TV program, directing documentaries. So I could work and do this at the same time. And there was not so many personal responsibilities, such as children or stuff, that I do have now. And it made me very eager. It made me very eager to make this film. I realized, like, the more difficult it was, like, I thought, like, fuck, no, I am going to do this, like, no matter what. And then they said, like, yeah, we'll give you money, but we'll give you less money. And we just thought, like, yeah, annoying. But we knew that we were going to make this film anyway, Like, sometimes you just know it. You just know it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also, I don't think like aesthetics is everything. So, which is maybe weird for a filmmaker, but I like very much where content is more important, or a certain vision of the makers is very clear,
Yeah. So with Ne me quitte pas, what was your vision? Because you started with, well, no one was interested, two people in the south of Belgium drinking beer, right? So what did you want to convey? What did you want the world to see?
Yeah, well, it was difficult because we were filming these guys, and we were doing this crowdfund project, and it was at the time that Belgium was not getting a government. They couldn't form a government for a long time, and we thought like we call it the end of Belgium, and we were going through Belgium and interviewing people and but we were always getting back to these two guys. And then I think the opening scene of the film is something we were just trying out doing. And this older guy, so this one guy, he's like in his 60s then, and the other one was in his 40s. And they were saying like they wanted to kill themselves together. And one of them said like, everything is fine, but at a certain point when I say life is enough, I'm just going to go to my tree of life. I'm going to sit there, I'm going to have a drink, and then that's just going to be it, So he said, all right, okay, now we will film your tree of life. So we go there. It was super hot. It was really like, it was 35 degrees or something, and I'm standing with this microphone. I'm a very bad sound woman, and Niels was doing with the camera, and we had all our equipment was sponsored. So we asked all these rentals companies if they could sponsor us, so we get this really old, big, unpractical equipment we got to film. So, and we were walking through the forest in the south of Belgium, and this guy was walking for hours and hours. And he's messing with us, and then we arrived there, and he says, shit, my tree is cut,
Oh.
I mean, we were searching for this tree of life forever, we were almost dying there, and we arrived there and all the trees were cut, and he's like, shit, it's cut, which was fantastic, and it was horrible and fantastic, and we just thought and I think there it's also when we realized this is what it is with this story about two guys who are just sitting somewhere waiting for Godot, whatever, or whoever Godot may be. I think that made us, this is what the film is about. It's about nothing. And so it's about everything, or the other way around. So we also thought we had a very clear idea about what we were going to film, although these guys are just sitting around all the time. But we just said, if they talk about food, if they talk about children and about women, then we will film,
Very topical. And this is your second challenge. I very much appreciate you describe the process, because you trusted your gut. Because as a second challenge, you say you need to be in this zone almost to sit, to think nobody cares. Here's what my gut tells me that we need to go for. So most probably when you saw the guy standing in front of his tree of life being cut, you were like, yes, this is now my gut feeling tells me we've got something and we're going with it. But that's a difficult decision to make.
No,
Still,
I think that now that's the story. I don't know how, I would wish for everybody in the beginning of their career a lot of failure, because success does not make you strong, failure makes you strong. Success is shit, if you have it in the beginning, how will you ever overcome success? You need to fail, because then this went wrong and that went wrong. And then, if it's really your path, you will go through it, people need to make mistakes. And I think it's really the most important thing of all, and if you don't make mistakes, how in the hell do you ever know what your gut feeling is? If you're afraid to make mistakes, you can never, ever, ever find your gut feeling.
Let's go to becoming Mona, and this is a few years later. So you and from Numikitapa, you took 5 years. Is that correct? To kind of from zero to the end product, and it was very well worth the project, because again, you won all these prizes, all these accolades and acknowledgements. Then how many years after that? And I'm sure you did work in between, but how many years after until you crossed paths with becoming Mona?
It was 7 years later.
7 years later.
Then it was finished. I think we also worked on it for.
Then it was finished.
I think 13, 20. Yeah, it was finished in 2020, which was really the best year, of course, to launch a film.
Yeah.
No, I mean we were in the theaters for 5 days or 4 days, and then there was a total lockdown. So that was kind of shit.
Yeah,
but I mean, there were worse things in the world going on.
Yeah.
But
you started?
No, I did other stuff, of course, but I also had 2 children in between.
Yeah.
There was also life.
You had other big projects ongoing. I'm just, what I'm curious about is once you've got such a beautiful documentary on your track record, and I yesterday saw, after I watched your film, I also saw an interview with the author, because Becoming Mona is based on a Flemish bestseller. So Griet Op de Beek, and the book she has written is Kom hier dat ik u kus, which freely translated means come here so I can hug you.
Kiss you.
Kiss you even. Yes, kiss you. Sorry. Yes, kiss you. But in my research, I saw that when you and your partner became aware of the book, you again had that gut feeling that you wanted to do something with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was actually, we were still touring for Numikitapa. We went to this island, on the east side of Australia, which is very far from Amsterdam. We chose this book. We were at the airport and we saw this title, "Come Here So I Can Kiss You," and Niels also has a past where he went to live in different countries, and he lived in Bosnia for a while. And there's one sentence he taught me in Bosnian, and this is "Dođi ovamo da te poljubim," and this means "come here so I can kiss you." So we saw this book, and we thought, like, fuck, we'll take it, we'll go, and we read it, and it's very Flemish, it's very Belgian, and it reminded us both, although we had the different childhoods, but it reminded us very much about how we grew up and how the houses were of friends we had when we were much younger. And then we said, like, if we would ever make a film out of a book, like maybe this book would be it. And so time passes, and I think like another almost a year later, she wrote a review about Ne me quitte pas, about this film, and we got up in the morning and we just said, like, we were tagged on Facebook because she made a mistake in the review, and then we said, Griet, the name of the author, said, it's fine, but hey, maybe we should have a coffee. And P.S. are the rights for the book still available? And then she reacted. And so we went to have dinner, and we had a very good click. I think we were both in a certain point in our lives, she and we. The next day we called, and she said, like, you don't have to ask me, It's just like, you get a couple of weeks, find out if you can make it work. And then the rights are yours.
Nice.
Yeah.
And with the highest praise in that specific interview, she speaks about your filmmaking and also the product you made of it. So basically, what got you into becoming Mona originally, other than, of course, the story, was also the fact that you and Niels identified with the story, because it's very Flemish Belgian, also where the region where you're from. So you saw lots of somewhat similarities, and that your affection grew from there into growing to take this project on. Or was there more? Was there anything more that you
more,
maybe from the Me quitte pas days? Yeah.
No. I think I was 6 months pregnant when we met with Griet. We were also forming our own family at that time, which is. But we found it pretty difficult, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe because we also sabotaged each other so often.
Still?
No, it's getting better. It's getting better after 10 years or something. But I mean, it was professionally, but it was also personally. We kind of did this. So I think the subject really, like this, where do you come from? How does it, in what way does it contribute to who you are when you grow up, and how you deal with your own relationships and with your own stuff and difficult stuff, like challenges in life. I think in this book we found very much like, there's this basis you get when you're young, like how you're raised and how you relate to the people who are supposed to take care of you, and to what degree they actually do this is very important. I mean, like, it can happen to everybody, but I think it's very important to be aware of it. Yeah. It was also difficult because I think, like, Mona, the main character of the film, is also someone who's not. It's not an easy main character because she's not out there. She's not outspoken. She's a very inactive main character, which is extremely difficult. And we were also a bit afraid of this. But I think I am, and I think Niels as well in his own way. But I mean, I'll speak for myself. But it's just like, I'm also afraid of this part of myself, that's, I think my mechanism, I don't know how to call it, my survival mechanism is to attack, like I will, like, if you want to hurt me, I'll hurt you back or something. And what she does, if someone hurts her, she just takes it, it's so hard to watch, it's so, but I think everybody does this in a way. And I think this is why I wanted to make the film, and I think Niels as well. Yeah.
I think the entire movie is a very good confrontational therapy session. And I found myself also being torn between, are basically the antagonists, so the people who are inflicting a suffering upon the main character, which is Mona, are they taking up too much space? Or is she taking up too little space? Which one is it, right? Because you're kind of continuously wondering, because at one point you're like thinking, you think that, I think practically all the time with the characters that are very confrontational, like, could you shut up for a minute? That's what you think. Mm-hmm. But at other moments you think about your inactive main character, like, could you speak? If you do not like this, why don't you speak up? You're getting the opportunity, but you're not taking the opportunity. so who's really to blame here, right? It's kind of like, she's not triggered for saying anything.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the other people, they're just too much, right? So it's kind of, but I felt myself torn at some moments where you're like, hey, there's a physical response of one of the characters that you're like, well, never in a million years I would let that happen, of someone, getting physical in such a way. It's like, why doesn't she hit back or something? Why doesn't she get physical back? And but you've done beautifully, right? This is all praise to you, but it's kind of the torment that
I think
you have as a viewer,
rational
right?
person. But if you're into a fight, there's a fight between Mona and her boyfriend Louis. I think it's a very real fight. I mean, there's no violence or anything in this, but I think it's a very violent scene. But it's only verbal, but it's very real. It's like, from my perspective, anyway. Like I think it's how people fight. Like people are not nice people when they fight, and they blame each other. A fight is never just one fight. It's always, if you're in a relationship, I think you always have one fight over and over again with different subjects,
it lingers on. There's a disagreement that just doesn't go away, and it'll repeat itself if you don't really take it out with all its roots, right? You need to kind of address it, or it will come back in some other shape or form. I think you're right. Yeah.
But I think like what she does, I mean, like she has all these very big egos around her. But she also clearly is attracting these people. I mean, like there's hundreds of thousands of different people out there. And for some reason, she has such a boss, such a boyfriend. She knows this kind of relationship where she is the shadow, or she's the one who's taking the blame, or it's familiar to her.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have this. I think it's very good if you're raised in a functional family, and if you're not taught to be in a healthy relationship, with any kind of relationship, I mean, in professionally or personally, like how do you do this?
Griet Op de Beek said, like, broken people, they will continue to sabotage unless someone points out to them where they're actually broken, right? So it's broken for, again, the people with their too big egos and who are, just dominate the situation too much. But it's equally something broken for someone who takes too little space. Yeah. So it's two sides of the coin, really.
We also did something because we never made drama, or I did a short drama before, but we never worked with actors very extensively before. So we were only documentary makers, and we decided we have to create a certain context that it is like a documentary, and we'll just be recording it as if it's real life, and we'll make it a film out of it. So, but we also did, like with the actors, we did a therapy session, for instance, which was also our gut feeling. You could say, like we said, like, okay, we'll do this. I mean, like we have therapy together, and we thought, like, and our therapist, she said that she does these family constellations, I think it's called in English. And we did this with the actors, and they also thought, like, oh, we're all going to do this. We're going to do this session, but we can do it as our character, the character we're playing. And we said, like, no, maybe, you could do this as yourself, which is, of course, a horrible thing to ask. We didn't know these people. I mean, like we just casted them. But I think this really worked well because we all have these systems in ourselves, and it turned out that we didn't cast them for no reason. They were all related to their own character in their own way. I mean, it's not that they are this character. It's not really not at all what I want to say, but they could find something within themselves or within people that were very close to them, that they could understand this person and actually really love this person also, no matter how awful the character is. Yeah.
There's so much in the movie, and also big kudos for the casting, especially the little girl at the beginning, kind of how subtle she is, and kind of, the tragedy that's ongoing and unfolding in front of her, and where, she tries to remain a child, and, her disappointment, and, all the things she goes through. I'm trying to not to give away too much because I want to encourage people to go and see the movie. But, there's so much in there. And, for such a young actress to convey that and to do that so controlled, yet, so dramatic. I mean, big kudos. And then also, this is what my wife said. She literally thought that the project had taken that long that the little girl had grown up, so that the main actress was the actual little girl. So like, my goodness, they look alike so much. And so it's really like you could really connect those two like instantly. When you see the first shots of the grown up Mona, you can see, hey, that's the same form of face, and you could really see her being that, right? It's not like, oh, they've just grab someone. It's like, no, there's really a connection between those two. I mean,
well, that is my ambition, that I could be, that I could actually pull this off. They don't look alike so much, but they have the same energy. Like it's also
maybe that's it.
I mean, like when we casted the role for little Mona, we already had the big Mona, which is Tanya Zabarillo, and she we had like 300 girls or something that wanted to cast for the role, so it was quite a search. And it was also very funny because Olivia Landau, the little girl, she always stayed in for the next round, but we never noticed her so much until the end. That we thought, like, this is why it's her, like
this is her. Yeah. No, it's wonderful. And then we go to, because again, it's gold for, once the movie comes out, you say 2020, which is a horrible year, I think, for filmmakers. Lots of things going on in the world. You're very right. But for you, for your profession, killing. And still you get your hands on, again, all these prizes. So what do you think it was that stood out this time? Was it, again, where you said you followed your gut feeling, you went for it, and success again? Do you think you repeated something of the original documentary Ne me quitte pas to becoming Mona, or would you say this is just a lucky shot, completely two independent events?
No, they're both brilliant films. I have to say that I think fiction or drama is more difficult to make because you're more dependent on many more people. I think, well, I'm not easily satisfied. So I think both films are really, I think they're well made. But I mean, I understand if people are, it's not someone's taste. But I do think they're well made. I mean, because of a lot of people who worked on it also. Mm. Yeah, if you win a prize or not, I mean, whatever. It's nice.
You would have been, yeah.
I think like now, but of course it's really nice and it helps my career and it helps me because the most important thing is to get funding, and every time if you get a success, it helps for your next project.
Yeah.
But I try to train myself in not making it too important. I have my little son, when we won this golden calf again, he was really like, woo! And he, on the way to school, and he says, we won a golden calf! We won a golden calf! And I was so ashamed. And I thought it was so stupid also, like, why am I ashamed? It's also something to be proud of.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
But I also think because if you don't win it, it doesn't mean it's not good.
No, 100%. It doesn't mean that the film isn't good, and there are so many other films and documentaries that are being made that might get a lot less attention, that are diamonds in the rough as well. Definitely. And that are gorgeous and deserve every bit of our admiration. So yeah, 100%. And at the end of the day, a prize is just a prize, but it's good to get that recognition.
Yeah, now that I'm telling it to you, maybe I felt also for my son, I thought like I don't want him to think it's normal. And I also don't want him to think that, like, if he doesn't win a prize, that it's not good for him or something. I think I want to promote failure more than success. I think that's much more important.
Yeah.
It's much more difficult to deal with failure than with success. Yeah.
Than with success, yeah. Well, I mean, we cherry-picked, of course, 2 of your projects that were a success.
Yeah, the rest is all
but
shit.
Not every project that you did. Yeah, no, not shit. But that doesn't mean that every project you did got such acknowledgements, right? Mm-hmm. You're doing a lot more than that. So that's
not so much more.
It's hard work, not so much more. Which is, by the way, your last challenge, because you already mentioned it before.
Yeah.
You don't want to work too hard. You really want to immerse yourself in a specific project and only do just that. Why is that? Why do you choose to work like that?
I'm a very bad multitasker, first of all. I realized that I'm not good at so many things. So the more time I spend doing different things, the less time I have to get better in what I'm good at. I think. But it's also, my brain doesn't work like that. I mean, like, I think to be free, I need to be ahead of my game, like if I have so much work to do and there's always much more work to a project than you think, because life happens all the time. So it's Like I like it when I'm not just like running behind something all the time, that I'm just reacting. I like to be acting, like I like to think about it. I like to just sit and think about stuff. I like to read a lot, like I like to watch a lot of stuff. I like to get inspired. And if I'm busy all the time, I'm just busy. I think that's horrible. It doesn't make me happy. I used to think like, like it's good that I'm tormented or whatever, like then it probably makes me a very good filmmaker. But that's not true. I realize that the better I feel, the happy is maybe a bit of a stupid word, but the better I feel, the more freedom I have to make things.
Yeah. I think every person is different in that regard. I was just thinking this morning that I actually thrive when I have a very big action list in front of me. Because I get creative because of it for some reason. I don't know why. But if you just give me one thing, then I will get bored and I will say, well, no, that's just not enough. So I'll get very lazy. So I'd rather have give me lots to do, and then I get moving. But for some people, it works completely the opposite. And you sound like one of those people that said, well, no, I get creative when I can just hyper focus on one thing, and then creative fluids or whatever is needed starts. With me, it's the other way around, but for everyone different, right? So it's good that you know that of yourself.
I think you don't know this when you're 20, you just don't know this.
Thank you so much, Sabine. I mean, there's so much that I still want to ask. Before I go to my two last questions, the two questions before that. One is, of course, the fact that you have made these beautiful films, documentaries with your partner, with whom you also have two beautiful children. And you already just highlighted the response of your son. But what do they think when mommy and daddy are working together on a project? Do you take your work home? Is it like, do you continue the conversation about your work at home? Or
I think sometimes they want us to talk less to each other. I think that's the main thing that we talk a lot, like Niels and I, we talk a lot all the time. We talk. And both of them, they like to talk as well. So they say now you have to talk to us. You cannot talk to each other anymore. But we talk to them.
Attention.
I mean, like my youngest is 3.5. She doesn't care so much, we're also home very often because we don't have, we're not working all the time. We have more periods that we're home a lot. And so I don't know, I think the oldest, he's like 6.5, and he realizes these things with success and failure, and he's in school himself. So I feel a very big responsibility towards him, like to explain, like it's not everything, like there's not such a thing as you're the best at something. Like as long as you're learning and you're challenged in what you do, that's what's important, But I think they like it. They're proud. They're very proud of us. I feel this. I'm also very proud of them.
Nice. But it's good to know they are aware of that you are creating this, and it's also kind of part of their universe, which is very nice to hear, right? And that they like it, and they embrace it as well. That's very nice. That sounds like a lovely thing.
Yeah.
So you started with Shout, Nimmergiet Pa, and then so many other projects. What are you working on right now, or are you working on something, or is there going to be something coming out, or what's next for you?
I'm writing now, also a project I'm doing together with Niels, but I'm writing it together with a Belgian screenwriter. She with Sanne Nuyens. She did several series already. The 12. Ricky Gervais said it was a really very good series, which is pretty cool. And what else? She did Beau Séjour, which recently had an English remake. I mean, she's very good. So I'm writing with her. This is a series about monks. It's like every episode, one of the monks dies or gets murdered or stops believing or whatever. And it's about how these 10 guys are creating their own downfall, I guess.
Tragicomical?
Yes.
Is that the word for it?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I cannot wait to see that one. And then going to our two very last questions that I ask every guest. If you could recommend one book to our listeners, one book that inspired you on your path as a filmmaker, or one book that inspired you as a person, which book would that be?
Yeah, I think at the end I would go for The First Bad Man from Miranda Jolie. I don't know, did you read this book?
Okay. No.
She's also a filmmaker and a writer, which I think is pretty cool. Like the first sentence, It's just the most funniest sentence or first line of a novel ever, I think. And it starts off something like, I'm standing at the red light. I'm looking at the guy next to me in his car, and he's looking at me, and he's probably thinking like, who's that middle-aged woman driving the gray Honda? And I think that's so funny.
who's that?
Yeah, I think that's really funny.
Yeah. Okay, and the very last question now. So let's turn the tables. This is the Sabine Lubbe Bakker podcast.
Yeah.
And you can invite a guest. Who would that guest be?
Yeah, well, I thought like, so now I'm going to put in another book.
Okay, yeah.
No, there's a lot of people.
Clever.
But I recently read the trilogy of Rachel Cusk. She's a British writer. And it blew me away. I thought it was so painful. I mean, like I would ask her if I could make these books into a film. It's just like about a woman, and you don't know anything about her, but it's just like people are talking to her all the time. And for me, it's really about like the type of conversations you have, or what other people are talking to you about, is in what stage of your life you are. You know, like it's. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, and she gives away a little bit, but it doesn't really matter because you feel, I mean, like, I like it very much that it's all about what you feel and you know, but you don't know or something. There's not so much information, but you can relate to her and you know, there's something going on and you know, it's not a nice thing, but all these people are just talking to her and wanting stuff. And I think she's about the same age as me. Yeah. I would be very curious about what she would have to say. Yeah.
Would you like her to see Becoming Mona?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I should
well, let's set it up.
Yeah.
We're gonna reach out to Rachel Cusk and we're gonna set it up for you to talk to her. Okay. And then for people to see Becoming Mona. Sabine, thank you so very much for sharing your experiences as a documentary and filmmaker. It was really lovely to hear you speak. It goes without saying, I'm very proud as your little cousin, to hear all these stories. And undoubtedly, we're going to hear a lot more from you as a filmmaker. Thank you so much for making some time today.
Oh, thank you, Aldo. Thank you.
If you liked this episode of the Teach Pitch podcast, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our beautiful theme music, Le Grand Chase. This podcast was produced and edited by Natalie Piles. Project coordination by Inva Cheney.